Hello everybody, Resonance here, and today I'm going to talk about the Siege Tower. Age of Empires 2 has been out for over 15 years now, and it has lasted more than a decade without any official balance changes. Things started to change when Microsoft announced Age of Empires 2 HD Edition, which is the official remake on Steam. On November 7th, 2013, the fan-made Forgotten Empires expansion was remastered and released on Steam as a new official expansion pack. And on November 5th, 2015, we now have African Kingdoms as our second brand new expansion DLC. In African Kingdoms, the Forgotten team added 4 new civilizations, a new campaign, new maps, balance changes, but more importantly for this video, they also added 1 new land unit, which is the Siege Tower. Currently, every civilization has access to the Siege Tower, and this brand new land unit has the unique ability to transport your units and deposit them on the other side of enemy walls. The Siege Tower is a tragically underused unit with an incredibly powerful effect, and in this video I'm going to explain how the unit works and what its place is in the Age of Empires 2 metagame. Then at the end of this video, I will show a brief clip of my first time using the Siege Tower in one of my live stream games. If you're interested in watching more Age of Empires 2 videos, you can find links to them in the video description below, including my detailed overviews for each of the new African Kingdom civilizations. I also live stream Age of Empires 2 and a wide variety of other games on my Twitch TV channel regularly, and you can find my live stream schedule there on my Twitch page by scrolling underneath the video player. Alright, so onto the Siege Tower. This unit can be created starting in the Castle Age at the Siege Workshop building. As of this video, the Siege Tower currently costs 300 wood and 160 gold. It has a whopping 220 hit points and 100 pierce armor, but it notably has 0 attack, 0 melee armor, and can garrison only 10 units. The Siege Tower is a slow-moving and very bulky unit that can transport up to 10 units at a time and then drop them on the other side of enemy walls. While this effect sounds very powerful on paper, in practice it does carry several meaningful weaknesses. For starters, the Siege Tower can only carry infantry, villagers, and foot archers, so this means that you cannot load the Siege Tower with knights, war elephants, or even other siege weapons. In this clip, you can see me create a Siege Tower in approximately 37 seconds, and then I attempt to load it up with a wide variety of units. While some units such as the Conquistador, Missionary, and Bombard Cannon cannot be transported, it is interesting to note that the Monk and Petard cannot be loaded either. Even though Monks and Petards are both on foot, the Siege Tower states that it can only hold infantry, villagers, or foot archers, and Monks and Petards unfortunately do not fit into either of those categories. So how exactly does the Siege Tower work? First, you have to fill the Siege Tower with infantry, villagers, or foot archers. Then once the Siege Tower is full of units, then you can select it and right-click on a piece of wall to drop your units on the other side of it. In this clip, you can see my Siege Tower transport a wide variety of units, and then I bring it over to the wall where it unloads them on the other side. But what happens when there are 2 layers of walls? Can a Siege Tower still drop units? Let's investigate. It turns out that the Siege Tower can only unload units on the other side of a single layer of walls. If there's another layer of walls, a building, a tree, or some other type of non-unit obstacle on the other side, then the Siege Tower will not be able to unload. Also, the Siege Tower is pretty buggy, and sometimes it fails to unload even if there are no obstacles, or it tries to path around the wall instead of unloading. Interestingly enough, the Siege Tower cannot deposit units over a single tile layer of buildings, such as a wall of outposts or towers. It only seems to work with stone walls, palisade walls, and fortified walls. The Siege Tower also cannot deposit units on the other side of a gate. I find it particularly strange that the Siege Tower does not work with gates. I know that your opponent would have to pay a lot more stone to build a wall composed of only gates, and that in some way it offers some counterplay, but realistically no opponent is going to waste that much stone on that many unnecessary gates. As I will explain later, these limitations mean that the Siege Tower will excel on maps like Arena, where players already start with a long, exposed layer of walls, because it will be too expensive to double layer the entire length or cover it in gates. The gate restriction basically just makes the Siege Tower feel frustrating to use. I understand that functionally it might be difficult to implement something like dropping units on the other side of a wall of outposts, but gates and walls are so intertwined that it almost feels necessary to me. And in some cases where it's a narrow choke point that can be blocked with the gate and maybe a very short segment of double layer walls, the siege tower is completely useless. The gate restriction makes a situational unit even more situational, and sometimes I wonder if it's only this way because the siege tower is just such a finicky unit to code. These limitations with the siege tower, combined with its high cost and inability to attack, means that it is a rather situational unit. But what situations would a siege tower excel in? According to the developers, the siege tower was designed to open up new types of strategies on closed maps. For maps like Black Forest and Highland, which contain easy-to-wall choke points, and maps like Arena, Fortress, and Hideout, the siege tower is going to be a persistent threat that players will have to adapt to. This also goes for open maps too, because in any situation where you feel safe with one layer of walls, now you will have to be on the lookout for any enemy siege towers, since they can easily bypass that defense. Battering rams and mangonels take time to destroy enemy walls, which can give your opponent enough time to react and prepare a defense. Remember that walls are best used as a way to warn you of enemy attacks and give you the necessary time to defend. In most cases, your opponent will eventually get past your walls, especially if he backs up his army with ranged units to snipe your villagers that try to build extra layers. So with that in mind, since walls are mostly used as a warning to stall for time, the siege tower seems powerful because it gives your opponent almost no time to react. Remember that walls give almost no line of sight on their own, so by the time your opponent sees the siege tower coming, your units will already be in his base. You can compare the siege tower to a group of petards because they both serve the similar purpose of bypassing enemy walls while giving your opponent no time to react. A group of petards can instantly blow a hole in the enemy walls and let your army charge past and suddenly start wreaking havoc. This is a somewhat common strategy on Arena, and the threat of a petard bust is enough to make players build extra layers of defenses behind their stone walls just in case. Notice how Chris carefully positions his houses and buildings so that if his walls get broken with petards, then he can quickly fill the holes to create a new makeshift layer of walls. If you're interested in seeing the full game, I'll have a link to that in the video description below. The main difference with the siege tower is that it does not require a castle first. In some cases, you won't be able to dedicate enough early villagers to mine stone in the time needed to build a castle, so a petard bust can occasionally be too slow. So in theory, this is where the siege tower comes in. On Arena particularly, you'll usually build an early siege workshop to pressure enemy walls, defend against siege weapons, and to combo with your own monks. Since the siege workshop is so much cheaper to build and it already provides a lot of utility, the siege tower sounds like a great option when you want to only bypass enemy walls. The problem is though is that the siege tower is a colossal resource investment and it provides no combat presence on its own. While battering rams and mangonels cannot destroy walls instantly, they force the enemy to attack them because the siege weapons can then threaten the other buildings and units. Similarly, while petards are mostly used to bust open walls and they can unfortunately only be used once, petards can at least blow up other types of buildings instantly as well, and that opens up the rare possibility for different types of play. In comparison to other siege weapons, the siege tower is rather binary because it can only unload over a single layer of walls, and oftentimes the high cost means that your army will be smaller and therefore have a lower impact once they actually enter the enemy base. The siege tower can't fight back, so once it drops off your army, then it becomes a sitting duck to enemy attacks. Players can also position buildings and units near the edges of their walls to give them enough vision so that they can see the siege tower coming before it gets there. If your opponent has map control and a small army of something like knights, then your siege tower is unlikely to survive the trip. Another weakness is that the siege tower can only carry 10 units at a time, and it frequently has trouble unloading units in large groups, so it may take some time to drop your entire army. The good news is though is that, except when walling narrow choke points, building a second layer of walls is usually too costly. And if the presence of a siege tower convinces your opponent to do that, then you have effectively done a ton of economic damage to him. Lastly, the siege tower is thankfully bulky enough that it has a reasonably high chance of surviving as long as you can escort it safely. Overall, the siege tower has an incredibly powerful effect, but it is held back by a laundry list of significant weaknesses. It is also worth noting that your opponent will not always have to rely on walls for defense, so I believe that the siege tower will be most useful on maps like Arena where players already start with walls. The main weakness of the siege tower I think lies in its colossal resource cost. If the price was slightly lower, then I can imagine that this unit might see some play. And of course, African Kingdoms just came out, so it's possible that the siege tower receives some balance changes in an upcoming patch. In my personal opinion, I believe that the siege tower could benefit from a small price reduction and some bug fixes too. Right now the unit is so expensive and limited in its application that the high price point makes it rarely usable and generally a very snowbally unit. My first impression is that the current siege tower is best used when you're already ahead and your opponent is forced to turtle inside the safety of their own walls. If you're ahead, then you'll have the necessary map control to escort a siege tower as well as the resources to afford one. Once you have map control, you can now safely use a siege tower to finish off your opponent before they have any chance at a comeback. When players fall behind in Age of Empires 2, they often take advantage of defensive buildings and units like walls and mangonels, and tactics like unit counters and raiding to try and stall for time while they catch up in army size. These comeback mechanics can allow players to defend temporarily with a smaller military. The strength of walls also offers slower civilizations with a strong late game, such as the Koreans, a chance to survive in the early game where they will inevitably fall behind. In my personal opinion, I don't really see much of a problem with defensive play being viable, as long as it is not overwhelmingly dominant. While some people view stone walls in the classic Conqueror's balance as a little too strong, I really feel like the massive nerfs to their build time, HP, cheaper petards, and the lower health of buildings in the early game has at the very least made stone walls significantly weaker in the Forgotten and African kingdoms. Perhaps stone walls were a tad too strong in the Conquerors, but with this set of changes, they're certainly not as good as they used to be. Sometimes I wonder if the siege tower is too much now that stone walls are far less dominant. At the end of the day, the siege tower does open up possibilities for more lines of play when your opponent is hiding behind walls. It is certainly a careful balance when making sure that walls provide an opportunity for defensive play, while not being so strong that your opponent has no way to deal with them. Originally, I was hoping for another land unit that all or most civilizations shared that would have some sort of impact in a wider variety of situations. But honestly, I'm not sure what type of unit I would have liked to see. There are so many civilizations, units, and technologies in Age of Empires 2 now that design space is becoming a little limited. Could the developers have added a new unit that felt unique in its design without being overpowered or feeling too different? I'm not entirely sure. Overall, the Siege Tower is a very unique unit, and despite my concerns, I still look forward to playing around with it. It is important to keep in mind that the Age of Empires 2 metagame is complex and continually evolving. This means that it will take a very long time before we can know for certain what units and civilizations are good or bad. I think it's far too easy to look at a new unit, civilization, or technology and incorrectly dismiss it as overpowered or too weak, without actually taking the time to really explore its design. I feel like this point is especially relevant on water balance, which recently got completely revamped. Getting the balance correct is tricky business, and I'm glad that the developers are taking their time with any balance changes. You can consider this video my first impressions, and it's likely that my opinion on the Siege Tower will change over time. It might take several attempts to get the price point just right so that it's a viable option and not too oppressive. And when that time comes, the Siege Tower might turn out to be an incredibly fun unit to play with. The Forgotten team so far has been consistently delivering content that I personally enjoy to the point where it has revitalized my interest in Age of Empires 2. I believe that they've done a tremendously good job of filling Ensemble Studios' shoes and continuing their vision, both graphically and through design. So while Age of Empires 2 HD Edition is not nearly as well optimized as I'd like, I'm willing to put up with it because the new content is just so much fun. One thing is for certain, the Siege Tower is a very interesting unit, and I can't wait to continue exploring its uses and how to play against it. So that was my video on the Siege Tower. Please let me know what you think in the video comments below. I spent a particularly long time scripting, recording, and editing this video, so I was thinking that for future projects I would try and streamline the process and maybe ad-lib most of it. Let me know if you'd be interested in a more casual, balanced discussion. I'm open to ideas and feedback, of course, on both this video and the Siege Tower unit in general. While I don't get a chance to respond to each comment individually, I do read them all, and I especially appreciate the people who politely respond to comments on my behalf. And of course, one of the easiest things you can do to show your support is by leaving a like rating on each of the videos that I upload. Just keep in mind that any non-Age of Empires videos that you see are just extra content and not a replacement for AoE. But I hope you enjoyed those as well. As always, thank you so much for the support, and I hope you all have a very happy holiday season. Good luck, and have fun! Okay. Oh, Siege Tower! Oh my god, are you serious? Oh, is this the one time? Oh my god. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've done it. We've won the Age of Empires. Oh, jeez. Truly a moment to go down in history books. Ever since African Kingdoms was released, this is the first time. No one is, literally no one's ever done that. Are you kidding me? Wow, this thing can only hold 10 units? This unit is trash. It costs, oh my god, it costs more than my college tuition. Get in the fucking, just, there we go. Idiots. Wow. Feels weird, man. Alright, does this unit work? What the fuck is he doing? I can't tell if he's moonwalking or not. Drop it off. Oh, you only dropped off. Okay, alright, drop off the other 4. Drop off the... Oh my god. This unit is so bad. just unload. Not enough room? What? Just do it. Black ones, I am attacking the wall. There we go. Oh my god. He's telling me there's not enough room. You ever wanted to know how bad unit pathing is in Age of Empires 2? Have you used one of these units? Oh man. Yeah, you learn a lot about the game mechanics, I'll tell you. Well,